Welcome to Rooted and Unwavering, a podcast and radio show which features leaders from all walks of life in conversations about courageous connectedness. How do we stay connected to our best selves, especially when we are challenged? What becomes possible when we truly stay committed to our own and others' greatness, also when we don't feel it? Join host Hylke Faber, transformational coach, facilitator, and award-winning author of Taming Your Crocodiles, and his guests as they explore leadership greatness in today's episode of Rooted and Unwavering.
Welcome to Rooted and Unwavering, where we help leaders connect more deeply to their innate potential. I'm your host, Hylke Faber. I'm here today, delighted to be here today with Massimo Backus, author, executive coach, speaker. Massimo, how are you today?
I'm doing very well, and I love the word delighted that you used to describe this. I'm delighted to be here as well.
Fantastic. I'm delighted to find a reacquaintance. We met, Massimo and I met at the Compassionate Leadership Summit back in Seattle in many years ago, before the pandemic. Before we learn more about Massimo, I'm going to share a little bit with you about the Rooted and Unwavering podcast. This is episode 71. We've been doing this for all these episodes to set the context. Why are we here? Why are we doing this? Why are we even listening to this or having and speaking into this conversation about being rooted and unwavering? To me, this is an endless journey. It's about finding out more and more ways to connect more deeply to what's most important to us. Really most important, not what comes maybe on the screens of our minds as a momentary episode of whatever it is. I've been watching The Gilded Age, highly recommend, on HBO Max, and you see how much distraction can happen based upon money, property, and prestige. And so these things are great things, can be great things, and maybe they're most important to you. Ask yourself, what is most important to you? And today we'll learn more about the power of compassion and kindness as a leadership competency. So I ask you to think about how you're thinking about your life and think about what's most important to you. And as you listen to this podcast, just think about what's most important to you and find playful ways to connect more deeply to that. So today we're here with Massimo Backus, who comes to us with so much experience. He is a leadership strategist, executive coach, and author of a delightful book called Human First, Leader Second: How Self-Compassion Outperforms Criticism. I just love that title, How Self-Compassion Outperforms Self-Criticism. He works with executive senior leaders and teams from up to fast-growing organizations to basically look at their internal narratives and inherited behaviors and transform them, to help leaders replace self-pressure with self-trust and shift from over-control to empowerment and build cultures where people flourish. He comes to us with a background in organizational psychology and more than a decade coaching senior executives. He's a rare combination of candor, compassion, and precision. He's also a keynote speaker. He's interactive, experiential, and brings story-driven experiences. And he's able to touch into people's humanity. And that was my experience as well as I reconnected with Massimo. And one of the first things he told me is that, hope you don't mind my sharing something about what's happening today in your house. Is that okay for you, Massimo? If I share that? Yeah. Yes. He's organizing for the second year in a row a pickleball tournament for his 12-year-old son in his school as a gift. It can tell you a lot about the person, the integration of depth and living depth in life. So welcome, Massimo. I'm looking forward to our conversation. Tell us, Massimo, about what have you learned about connectedness in your life and leadership. Tell us about that.
Hylke, thank you for that, the very kind and generous introduction. It's interesting as I think about connectedness, it has had very different definitions and meanings for me over my life, and I can kind of think about it in a 3-act play. The first early in my career is that connection came through achievement. The more that I achieved, the more that I had, the more status, authority, influence, impact that I had, then I felt connection. And that all stemmed from a place of needing to prove myself. And I'm dyslexic, and growing up with dyslexia, it had a profound impact on my sense of self-worth and my sense of how to navigate the world, and where do I fit. And most places I found that I didn't fit. Often felt like a misfit, always kind of late to the party on whatever was going on. And that created a great motivation and drive in me that allowed me to accomplish many things in one context. That all changed in a significant manner last October 17th, 2025. I was watching the Seattle Mariners, my home baseball team, in the playoffs against the Toronto Blue Jays. And we hit a home run, and I got up off the couch to go celebrate. I'm gregarious and enthusiastic, and I went to go and high five and hug all of my friends, and I slipped. I was wearing socks on a hardwood floor, which we all know is something you don't want to do, certainly when you're running. And I went face first into a kitchen island, and I broke several bones in half my face and nearly lost my eye. And it sidelined me, and I wasn't able to do anything for several months after, and for them to do the same. And so as I look back, those 3-4 months of healing were some of the happiest of my life.
Amazing to hear, Massimo. Thank you for sharing. Deep resonance. I'm curious about part of your journey before, I think you said October 17, 2025. Is that right?
Yeah.
And I'm curious because you said, I heard you say, I was this leader, and then I learned about self-compassion and self-kindness and how that was important and how that is important. Can you tell us about maybe an experience where you learned that that's not just a nice thing, because who's going to argue with you? Be kind. But that it's so core. What can you tell us about an experience that you had back then that helped shape you?
Bully, which broke my heart. I had this knot in my stomach. I thought, I felt like I was going to throw up hearing that. So far from who I wanted to be. But again, that was their experience. Why was that happening? Because I was so linked to the need for external approval that if I didn't get it, I went into fight, flight, freeze. I got defensive, and my nervous system was hijacked. I had the fortune and opportunity of going to a retreat called the Hoffman process. Are you familiar with that, Hylke?
Yes. Go ahead.
And during
maybe before you go on, maybe it's for our readers who don't know about this, maybe describe briefly what's that?
Yeah. So the Hoffman process started, I believe, in the late 70s, early 80s by a gentleman, Bob Hoffman. Their main campus is in Northern California, but they have one in Europe and Canada. And the premise is that there are certain things that are kind of wired into us, our patterns of the way that we react to the world, that we have learned from our parents and they learned from their parents. And it's no one's fault. No one did it intentionally, but they're survival mechanisms. They're just things that got ingrained in us at a young age before we were conscious of what we were doing. And as we evolve into adulthood and we become mindful, we recognize, well, these patterns don't serve me in the way that I thought they would. These are actually getting in the way of my well-being, meaningful relationships, my profession, the life that I want. And for me, defensiveness was one of those patterns that, that's something that has a long lineage in my family. And that's not to blame anyone. And if anything, it gave me an opportunity to have forgiveness for anyone in my family who also lived in a very defensive manner, because I know how awful that is and the impact of it. And so it's a week-long retreat. It's very intensive. You're removed from the outside world, and you're really able to just focus on yourself. And it was on day 4 of this retreat. We had just finished about a 90-minute guided visualization. And I remember at the end of that, I opened up my eyes, and we were inside of a room all sitting together in a circle, but I could hear the birds outside of the building in high fidelity, in a way that I have not heard birds before. And then we went on a break after that, and I went for a walk by myself, and I could feel the sun hit my skin in ways that I hadn't felt before. I could hear the rustling of the leaves as the wind went through the trees. My senses were heightened. And what I realized is that something was missing, and that's what allowed me to hear more clearly. And what was missing was this incessant critical voice. You need to prove yourself. You're not enough. You're going to be excluded. These things that were very much ingrained in me at a young age. And in the absence of those, I was able to hear things more clearly. And in the absence of that, I was able to hear this other voice, other part of me that does love who I am. And in that moment by myself on this trail in the woods, I began laughing hysterically, like childlike, abundant laughter. You're laughing so hard that you are laughing at how much of it you're laughing. You know, when you get together with your friends and you just can't stop laughing and it feels so good. That was me by myself in the woods. And in that moment, it was the first time in my life that I had experienced true self-love. And I was intoxicated by it. It was an experience that I never knew was possible. I had read about these things, but I never thought it would be something that I would be able to experience in my life. And that was a big shift for me in recognizing that my clients, the people that I work with me, the people that come work with you, Hylke, they come with a symptom that they want addressed. And if we go deep enough to understand what is the root cause of the symptom, 9 times out of 10, it has to do with what is our relationship to ourselves. It's easy to complain or blame the relationship with another person or your external circumstances. But if we get real honest, we say, what is our relationship to ourselves? How are we treating ourselves? Do we have the same commitment to be loving to ourselves as we would our partner, our children? And most people don't ever stop in life to ask that question. And the myth is that, well, loving ourselves doesn't matter as long as we love our family. They're the most important thing. And I'm sure the listeners are familiar with, putting your oxygen mask on first. In simple terms, that's really what this is. It's not love yourself just in spite of other people. It's don't forget to also include loving yourself. And once I did that, I wasn't defensive anymore, because I realized that I was defensive because I felt like I was under attack. But I was under attack by me. I was the one who was so critical. I was the one who was always on my case, not others. And it allowed me to hear what people were saying with the intention that they actually had.
So profound to have a realization of the person who's attacking me is me, and not sometimes, but all the time. It's like a part that obscured, in your case, the heightened, well, not heightened, the healthy awareness of what is, of the birds, of all of the trees, of yourself, and how powerful that is. I'm curious, Massimo. I'm curious about this self-critiquing voice that was in you. Is it still in you?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And before you go on, how do you work with that?
There's 3 steps to this as I look at it. And the first is awareness. It's a simple question of, what am I noticing? Well, I'm noticing I'm being really hard on myself in this situation. Or if I'm being hypercritical of others, it's a pretty good indicator that I'm also being critical of myself. So I have to notice it. The second is accept the circumstances with which it's happening. Um, Moments after my accident, uh, I knew something really, really bad had happened, but I didn't know the severity of it.
Mm.
And I was laying on the floor there. There were people on the phone with 911. I knew an ambulance was coming. And I was still in full shock from what happened. But I remember in my mind, I saw two paths very clearly. And one path was self-loathing. It was, you are an idiot. You're clumsy. How could you slip and fall? You ruined the game for everybody. You're a fool. And I've spent time down that road. I know that road well. But I also saw a second road, and it was, you don't get to control anything that happens from here on out. We don't know how bad this is. We don't know if you'll be able to. At the time, I thought I had lost my eye, and I thought I'd lost several teeth. Um, and I saw that as an opportunity to just surrender. You don't get to choose. You don't get to choose what hospital you come to, how much pain you're in, how long it takes. Hylke, I'm a kind of a vain person. I had to let go of, you don't know what you're going to look like at the end of this. And gratitude, surrender and gratitude. And I chose that path immediately. And I surrendered to everything that was out of my control. And I said, the one thing I get to choose from here on out is to be grateful. And every nurse, technician, ambulance driver, doctor that I came in touch with, every friend, family member, thank you. Thank you. From the bottom of my heart. With a broken mouth, I could barely talk, but that's the one thing I chose to do. And that's the third piece of it, which is accountability. I'm aware of what's going on. I have to accept what is, what's in my control and what's not. And then based on what's in my control, what's the accountable action step that I can take? And I would like to think, because of the years that I have done in practicing self-compassion, that I was ready in that moment to see those paths and choose so quickly. And I remember feeling a sense of, I was proud of myself in that moment. I surprised myself in that moment for seeing that so clearly, choosing it with such commitment. And it's what carried me through my entire recovery, surrender and gratitude.
The clarity that you had and the commitment that you had in practicing those 3 A's of awareness, of acceptance, of accountable action, that's quite something. I appreciate you saying that everything until then probably prepared me for that and made me ready. So how is it now? How are you doing now?
One of the things that changed for me after the accident is your priorities get really clear. And oftentimes when we think about our priorities, the list gets pretty long. And all of a sudden, it's not really a list of priorities. It's a list of to-dos, shoulds, dreams, ambitions, but not priorities. And this accident made my priorities really clear: my family and my health. That's it. Without those, I've got nothing. The work that I love, my clients, my relationships, I wouldn't be able to have those without my health and without my family. And what that opened up is for me to step back and distance myself from the other parts of my identity of executive coach and keynote speaker and author, and all of these other things that are masks of some sort that we wear. And I realized that I was working so hard, I was pushing so hard to achieve something still, even though I thought I had let that go, that I thought if I just do more, someday I'll get to the place that I want to be. And in the months that I was recovering, I was essentially stuck in a nursing chair for 3 months. I couldn't really do much of anything, but admire my home, admire the leaves changing. It was fall time here in Seattle, and just watch Mother Nature run her course. And I realized that everything that I've been working so hard for, that I thought I would get in some future state, I already had. I already had the life that I dreamed of. I already have a beautiful family. I already have loving friendships, and how fortunate I am to live in a beautiful home and have the life that I have. And there's so much value in the acknowledgement and the gratitude of look at the life that I have right now. I don't need to sacrifice so much to get the next thing, because when I do that, I rob myself of the gift of the present. I rob myself of the enjoyment of the fruits of that labor that I already have achieved, right? And I don't mean just things. I mean, I have a good family because I've worked hard at it for many years, you know? Um, and so that gave me a great sense of peace. But since the accident, what I've been wrestling with is now my motivation is different. I'm not motivated by the same things that I used to be. And I'm trying to make sense of that and reconcile it. I'm too young to retire. I've got too much that I still, I want to do, but the fuel that used to drive me to do those things has to change.
I love that honesty and that clarity of where you are, in which I hear a question mark about the fuel. Because as I was listening, I was thinking about, I love that you found in inspiring for all of us to find that sense. What I sense from you is an unconditional gratitude for what is here. And you have some conditions to be grateful for, like your family and your current health and the beautiful home that you live in and the beautiful work that you get to do and all these things. Yes. So I hear in that sort of an unconditional gratitude and that sort of sense of, no, I'm choosing this. And I'm also choosing to not continue not putting words in your mouth, the way I heard, the rat race that I might have put myself on, which deprived me from living this moment and enjoying this moment completely. We're going to take a break in a moment. After the break, I'm very curious about your explorations about drive, because you said, I'm too young to retire. Actually, I had a friend. He was the president of the Global Child Nutrition Foundation. She founded that in the 70s, and when she was in her 70s, and then I met her in the early 90s, and she said retirement is a sacred cow that should be made into hamburger. So it's something that she had a lot of drive until way deep into her 90s, and then she had a degenerative brain thing that happened, and then she died. So after the break, I want to hear more from you at this stage in your life. I'm curious for the listeners and also and for myself. What are you finding about questions about how do you connect with your drive? So you've been listening to Rooted and Unwavering. I have a wonderful guest today, Massimo Backus, who's talking to us about self-compassion and going from this place of endless self-criticism. He's the author of Human First, Leader Second, How Self-Compassion Outperforms Self-Criticism. And I love, Massimo, how you are living that. See you after the break.
You are listening to Rooted and Unwavering, presented by Growth Leaders Network, the leadership, team, and culture development company. If you would like to learn more about working on connectedness for yourself, your team, or organization, please contact Growth Leaders Network on LinkedIn. And now, back to the show.
So welcome back to Rooted and Unwavering, talking to Massimo Backus, executive coach, speaker, and mostly a human, as we're discovering more. So Massimo, tell us more about what you're discovering about connecting with your authentic drive.
The months after the accident, when I started to get back to normal life, um, I noticed something was off. The drive wasn't there, and it was uh, it left a big hole in me. I realized that um, I had a kinship with being a driven, motivated person. It was so tied to my identity that it was quite scary for it to not be there. I was like, I don't really know who I am without that. That's what's gotten me up in the morning and helped me achieve and create the life that I have and that I love. Um, but I knew there was no going back either, and I also had a knowing or a wisdom that I don't want to go back. That it served its purpose, but I have an opportunity now for a new beginning. Should I choose to take it? And I took that very seriously. This is an opportunity to do something different. Um, and I spent the first few months trying to work on this myself. As you know, Hilke, as a coach, we can often apply these things to ourselves, but to limited effect. There is a reason why people work with others to serve them and support them in this. And just recently, I went to a retreat in Santa Fe, New Mexico, at the Modern Elder Academy, which is a phenomenal organization, a beautiful retreat center. It's more like a luxury hotel. But this particular retreat was about asking the question of who am I now after a big life event transition? Who are we becoming? What's the next evolution of who we are? And one of the models that we worked with was Carl Jung's archetypes. And there's 12 archetypes, and the premise behind these is in Jung's work is that they're a part of a collective consciousness and unconsciousness that we all have, meaning that we all possess all of these archetypes. And they're not personality types, they're kind of different parts of our personality. And similar to our values, each person has a unique and distinct set of values, and we have a unique and distinct relationship with these archetypes. And in that work, I realized that there was one archetype that I was very familiar with, and that had maybe been the only other archetype that was, with me. It was me in that, and it was the archetype of the hero, which is all about achievement, focused, build, grow, expand, impact. And I could have gratitude for that, and I could also say, going forward, you can stay in the car, but you're going to be in the back seat. And we're going to invite some other archetypes on the journey going forward. And so the lover is an archetype that's all about connection, deep, meaningful connection, expressing what our real hopes and dreams are, our real fears, that authenticity, the kind of the courageous vulnerability. And I realized, well, that's really who I am at my core. But that has not been in the car with me for quite some time. So I invited the lover in as the co-pilot. The sage, which is about learning, and I have been a lifelong learner, but I also realize that there are certain things that I haven't necessarily opened myself up to being curious about and learning about. And so bringing the sage in a more meaningful way is what allows me to get more curious about things that maybe have been fringe or seemed superfluous or unnecessary towards, the achievement. And so that's just an opportunity for me to just expand my understanding of my inner world and the world around me. And then the third is the magician, which is about bringing forth the wisdom from one's experiences to help other people transform, which I think is so fundamental to the work that we do as coaches and facilitators and practitioners. But what does that mean now, given that I've learned something? I have a different perspective on a life today that I did a year ago. And if anything, it feels less lonely. Just the grind, the rat race that you were talking about can feel really lonely. And now there's other parts of me that I get to bring to my work and to my life and to the relationships that I have. And so that's been a really profound shift. And then the other thing is getting really clear on what my values are today, um, and acknowledging that some values have stayed the same. My value for freedom and independence has always been there and endures. But there's other values that maybe I've had, but I haven't really given much uh, attention to, like connection,
Mm.
like growth. Um, and so now is an opportunity to do that. And the value of achievement is something that will still be there, but it's just lower in the priority order.
Fantastic. I love the exploration of Jung's archetypes, and I love your connection with the parts of you that now are more in the front seat with you, like the lover and the sage and the magician. Can you tell us, in your day to day, if you think about, time and attention are our most valuable assets as a human, as far as I'm concerned. So, what does that mean in terms of how you spend your days, maybe differently from before October 17, 25?
A really practical example, Hilke, is in working with my clients, my days used to be stacked back to back. And you can't give your all to someone if you don't have your all to give, if you're depleted. So I've restructured the cadence with which I work with my clients so I have more time before and after, to make sure that I'm fully present and I'm fully prepared and I can give them 100% of me into that. So that's one small example.
Great.
I made a commitment to myself at the beginning of the year because I was insatiable before. As an entrepreneur, if you take vacation, you might not be, making money. 6 months from now isn't guaranteed what you're going to make, or a year from now. And so I became insatiable. I just wanted more and more and more and more work, more impact, more of a platform. And the commitment I made at the beginning of this year was to work 75% of what I've done any year before, and no more, to draw a line. And that 25% wasn't dedicated to one particular thing. It's largely been dedicated to my health, to time with my family, because those are the two things that were the clear priorities after this accident. But it's not rigid. The time with my family could be playing pickleball with my son in the backyard or going for a walk with my wife. But I have the space for that now, whereas before all the space was taken up by that hero, by that need to achieve, by fear, ultimately. And that has been such a gift. And it is what has changed the fear that I once had of, oh no, if I don't have motivation, I can't retire. What am I going to do? To, I get to create the life that I want. And I can serve my clients better in this way. I can still be successful in all the ways that I want to be, including my top priorities of my health and my family.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I hear also the way in which you talk about it, a lot of resoluteness. I don't hear conflict. And for an entrepreneur to say, I'm going to do 75% of what I did last year, goal-wise, that's a lot. And meaning a lot for an entrepreneur to, it's like, okay, yeah. And I love the suggestion or the practice of taking time for yourself, because you can't give your all if you're not your all. You don't have your all to give. I love that framing and that way of being about it. So if you think ahead in your life, Massimo, what do you yearn for? And I'm going to ask you that also in the context of the world that we live in, because you have a son and we live in a society, in a world, in a certain time of history, even everybody has their own interpretations about that. What do you yearn for?
When you think about it on a societal level, there's a good argument to be made that we're more isolated, separated, and divided maybe than ever before. And when you connect with somebody, human to human, not political party to political party, or power status based on title, or which neighborhood they live in, or their socioeconomic status, but just see them as another human being, the possibilities are endless and the commonalities are endless, because fundamentally people do want the same things. People all want to have peace for themselves and peace for others. How they go about doing it is very different. But that's how I'm orienting my life going forward, is what brings me peace, what will allow me to enjoy this day as much as possible. And I don't mean enjoyment like, sitting on a pool noodle, drinking beer all day in the sunshine, but whatever the day brings, how can I take the most from it in a positive way? And how can I give the most to it in a positive way? Because what this accident taught me is tomorrow is not promised. I was very fortunate to have such a good outcome from this, and the surgical team, they're brilliant miracle workers to put me back together. But it could have been a really different story. And for many people it is. So tomorrow's not promised, but today is here. And I try and focus on that as much as possible. And what that looks like in practice is, I'm a lot more present. I'm a lot slower. I'm a lot more thoughtful. And success is, what's the end of the day feel like versus where do I have to be in 5 years? And just like going to the gym every day, if you're consistent with those things, you're going to get compound interest. And I have faith now that whatever I want in the future will come from the small decisions that I make today. But focusing on what's going to happen 5 years from now, it's foolish. In my experience, that's just a foolish thing to do.
Very, very powerful. The orientation of my success is looking at the end of the day and saying, yeah, did I have a peaceful day? Did I enjoy today? And did I bring my joy to this day today? So I love that as an orientation, very different from where will I be in 5 years? What will I have in 5 years? Which is the mantra that we live in this society, or at least fed by the outside sources. And I love the inner journey you've taken. I'm sitting here and I'm sitting on this question, Master. So I'm going to ask this question, right? So what would you say to somebody who's like, I'm playing devil's advocate now.
Please.
He's got it easy. It's kind of weird to say that to you after your accident. We've got it easy. Clearly you seem to be financially secure. You have a lovely family. You have a lovely wife. You have, as part of your family, you have a lovely home. All these things. He's got it easy to talk about. You don't have to do this scramble anymore. I'm just thinking, a person like we have 3 kids in school. We have mortgages. We have to work, both of us. We work in the tech industry. There's layoffs. There's AI. If I don't have drive, I don't have a job, and I don't have a financial security that I need. So what would you say to a person or a personality that is there?
Yeah. I would look at this from 2 perspectives, Hylke. One is past success can be a strong predictor for future success. So when I talked about working 75%, I could have gotten very fearful of that 25% that I'm missing. Or when I'm thinking about being motivated differently, what if this all comes crashing down? And I certainly have had these thoughts, like, what if I can't go back to work? How will I provide for my family? But I had to look at, well, what's the evidence that I have that I'll figure it out? Not that I'm going to, start a unicorn company or become famous, nothing of grandeur, but what evidence do I have that I'll be able to maintain the success that I've had? Well, I have decades of experience that have built to this. And I'm not dead. I'm not stopping what I'm doing. I'm just making some tweaks. So I can look at that and say, like, well, there's real data to suggest that I know what I'm doing, and I do good work, and I have great relationships with clients. And so that's not going to change. I also look at what value have I gotten by fixating on the future, which is oftentimes fear-oriented. Will I have enough? What is enough? Will I be able to retire? Can I get the speedboat? Can I get the bigger house? Can I pay for kids' college? That just creates anxiety for me. It's very much a fear orientation, as opposed to what's the plan that I need to have today in order to work towards that goal and be consistent with it. And what's the evidence that I have that can give me the confidence that I can execute that plan, because I have been executing a plan up to this point. And those two things, when I have clarity of them, I'm able to let them go. And what does that leave me with? It leaves me with the present.
Great.
And that's the only thing I can control, is what's happening right here and now. The rest, surrender, gratitude.
Love it. Very clear. The sense of, okay, the clarity about, okay, yeah, I've been down that fear road before of the future. I could go there. It's an experience. Doesn't help me or anybody else. It actually gets in the way of what I'm actually about, including financial success. I don't see you denying financial success as part of what you are about. And then look at the data. Look at the data that you have about your life. What do you know about yourself? And what do you know about the resourcefulness that you are? What do you know about the plan that you can execute consistently? And the question I hear in that is, do you need to execute your plan at the expense of losing the present?
Beautifully said.
Is that what you need to do?
Yeah.
And it sounds to me like you've come to a resounding no. No, I don't need to do that. And actually, no more, and even more strongly, I've made a firm commitment to not do that. And that's one of the things that really strikes me from this conversation, Massimo, your sense of commitment, because there's so many voices in us that can pull us momentarily. What I'm curious about is, how do you, if you do, and maybe this is naturally or unconsciously skilled, how do you fuel your commitment to stay in the present?
It'd be great if I could say that it was, some strength of discipline or something. I'm less than a year past this accident, and I still have scar tissue in my face. I still feel pain in my eye. So I have daily reminders, physical daily reminders of what I have to be grateful for, the need to surrender, what I could have lost, what I have. But the biggest thing I do is I just notice, because I get pulled off of track. I get pulled into fear or not knowing about the future or the what if scenarios. But for me to have clarity of, what are the principles that I lead my life by now, help me get back on track. Hey, I noticed that I'm having thoughts about the future and fear. Well, for me, I don't know exactly what I want in the future right now. I know that I'm really grateful for the present. I know that what I used to want in the future isn't what I want anymore. And so that creates an opportunity for me to reimagine what that is. And I'm in the process of doing it, but I'm not rushing it. It will come in time. It will present itself. And I'm surrendering to that because it's incredibly uncomfortable. I would love to have a clear picture of, what my 5-year plan is and where I want to go. And, that'd be great, but I don't. So I have to accept that. And find something to appreciate, to be grateful for about the space of not knowing. And there will come a time where that comes into view. I hope that it's something that feels honest and true. It's not uncommon for people to fixate on a goal and never revisit it to go, is this my goal? Where did this goal come from? Is it really what I want anymore? I see it mostly with people that are in the corporate world. Everybody wants to get promoted. Well, we've been getting promoted since kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade. You're always getting promoted. It's ingrained in us that if you're not moving up, then there's something wrong with you. And it doesn't really introduce the idea of like, what about moving laterally? What about moving in circles? What about moving into a complete domain? There's all sorts of possibilities, but we're used to this ladder. And a regular occurrence with my clients is to ask them, like, where are you rushing to? I just want more responsibility. I want to be like, but where are you trying to get to? Is another $100,000, is $1 million going to change everything for you? You'll have more stuff. You'll have more things to maintain. You might have a bigger house. Well, now you need more rooms to clean. But does that give you what it is you're actually looking for? And what I've learned is you can have all the things, but if you're not living in the present and enjoying it, it doesn't matter. Because you're just fixated on how do I keep up this lifestyle. And that's not to say that I don't appreciate nice things, Hylke, or have ambitions, or, I do. But I just realized that if you're not present enough to enjoy them, and they're just giving you anxiety about the future in order to service this, then you're robbing yourself. And some of the most enjoyable things that we can do are free. Laughing with friends. What's better than getting together with friends and laughing?
Great question. Yeah. Great question. I love that question. You used the word surrender quite a few times. And maybe this conversation's flying by, we're getting into the closing minutes. Tell us about, what is surrender like for you?
Surrender is very peaceful because it's an acceptance of what I can't control. Trying to control what we can't control is such a frustrating experience. Because we want to change the outcome. I use this metaphor a lot with clients that are complaining about the economy. And I'm like, the economy is like the weather. If it's raining outside and you go outside and you yell and complain about how it's raining, does it stop raining? No, that's not in your control. But what is what do you do about it? Am I going to take an umbrella today? Am I going to stay inside? Am I going to dress differently? Am I going to wear a hat? Like, those are the things you can do. That's empowering. But whether it's raining or not, it's just is. And it shrinks our world. It brings our world into view of like what really matters. Again, the accident, family, and health, it gave me clarity. I was chasing so many different things. I didn't know what was important because everything was important. But when you have clarity of what's important, what's in your control, what's not in your control, now you've got your hand firmly on the wheel of where you want to go. And that's enough. That's plenty. Just doing the work with what's in our control is not easy. So why add in all these other things that they're just not? You get stuck in traffic, you could spend that energy yelling at everybody and honking your horn and getting frustrated, or you could think, okay, who do I need to call to let them know I'm running late? And accept there's traffic. Doesn't mean you have to like it, by the way. I'm not suggesting that surrender means I didn't like the feeling after my accident. You don't have to like these things. But there are things in this world that are far bigger than us. And accepting that there's a beauty in it. I was telling you, I just spent a week in the Dolomites in Italy. And when you're in a mountain range like that is so vast and powerful and expansive, you feel really insignificant. And there's freedom in that, in the insignificance. But we live in a society where we all want to be more significant. There's a big burden to carry with significance. And I'm not sure it serves us.
Thank you for sharing that. Very moving and profound. There's a big burden to carry with significance, and I'm not sure it serves us. Love that. That's something I'm going to carry with me, not as a burden, but as an insight. Thank you for that, Massimo. Beautifully said. And as I'm recalling so many things from this conversation as we're getting to a close, the sense of I need to be clear about what my priorities are, not what I've learned might be my priorities. In your case, family and health. Gratitude, surrender, being willing to look at what's outside of my control and not going after that. Also being ready to take an honest look and say, hey, what is my life really about? Is this promotion to the next level from grade 1 to 2 to VP, CVP, whatever it might be? Is that really what makes me happy? And is it okay to ask that question? And my conversation with you makes it clear to me that it's really not only okay, but very important that we ask that question. What is actually important to me? And then from your accident, the absolute clarity. I can take the road of stress, fear, resentment, self-criticism, or I can take the road of compassion, acceptance, awareness, and being accountable and being grateful. Thank you so much, Massimo. What would you say by way of closing today?
I just want to start by thanking you, Hylke. Your presence and curiosity made for a great conversation here, a great interview, and it's a rare talent, and it's a real gift. So I appreciate that. Anais Nin said you can listen someone into existence, and I feel like you did that for me today. So thank you. And for those that are listening, get curious about what you're noticing about yourself. The self-judgment comes really easy. We're all excellent at being hard on ourselves, but you don't get a merit badge for that. There's no value in it. And if you're being judgmental, you can't be curious. So just experiment with what would it be like to be curious about something without judgment, and see what you find. You might be surprised by the wisdom and the power that comes from recognizing that you're in a really good spot, and that you're a person who's loved and lovable and loving.
Thank you, Massimo. So beautiful. You're a person that's loved, lovable, and loving. And be curious and notice that judgment does not allow for curiosity. Thank you so much, Massimo. It was a delight to be with you. Massimo is an executive coach, speaker, and author of this wonderful book, Human First, Leaders Second: How Self-Compassion Outperforms self-criticism, and I have to do a wink with the word outperform because I understand now more about what you meant by that. And so you've been listening to this podcast. If you want to find Massimo, you can find him on LinkedIn and other places. If you like this podcast, you can listen to us on Apple and Spotify, other places that one listens to podcasts. And appreciate you spending the time together. You've been listening to Rooted and Unwavering, where we help leaders connect more deeply to their innate potential. I'm your host, Hylke Faber. See you next time.
Thank you for joining us in today's episode of Rooted and Unwavering, leadership conversations about courageous connectedness, presented by the leadership development company, Growth Leaders Network. To learn more, subscribe to this podcast, connect with Growth Leaders Network and Hylke Faber on LinkedIn, or read Hylke's award-winning book, Taming Your Crocodiles. Now take a moment and appreciate something that is great about you. Celebrate the gift that you are and enjoy connecting more deeply to your best self today. See you next time on Rooted and Unwavering.